Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so before going to the labs session, so I'll just briefly overview the major frameworks that are used for deep learning, or you can say machine learning. So the first one is Keras. So it is, you can say, a subset or a higher level API for the TensorFlow. Okay, so TensorFlow is the base of Keras actually, and the other one is PyTorch. So these are the three major frameworks that are being used for actual prototyping or industrializing, I can say that. So these are the different point where these are the properties on which they differ. So first is the architecture. So architecture of Keras is pretty simple. It's a higher level API, so it's very easy to use. While it is not the same for TensorFlow and PyTorch. So TensorFlow is slightly complicated in implementing that, and PyTorch is similar to TensorFlow. So you can majorly compare TensorFlow and PyTorch. Those are basically the what you can say lower level APIs. So we need to do a lot to configure a model in these two frameworks. While Keras being the higher level API, it's very simple, easy to use API, and you can quickly prototype it in this Keras. While this TensorFlow has got both the high level API and the most lower level API, where you need to. So this comes into picture when you are in a very advanced stage of implementing the prototype or model. Then you need to have tweaking capabilities for very innermost, you can say, knobs for the machine learning algorithm. And same thing, PyTorch is also a lower level API. So computation graph. So as I mentioned in the graph thing, so the computation graph is similar concept where how the processing of individual operation take place step by step is represented in the form of graph in this all three frameworks. But the difference is TensorFlow and Keras are basically a static graph, while PyTorch is a dynamic, having dynamic graph, so it can change at runtime as well. And that is the advantage you can say in PyTorch. So processing speed, so as this is a higher level API and has to go to a lot more abstraction, and it is not as optimized as the main TensorFlow. So it is slightly slower, but the TensorFlow is and PyTorch are quick enough compared to Keras. So when we come to the languages that are supported, so Keras support Python and R. TensorFlow is the main where it supports on majorly all standard programming language like Python, JavaScript, C++, Swift, etc. And PyTorch is basically supported on C++, Python, and Java. So major languages are covered in PyTorch as well. Now, when we come to friendly, so as this is a simple use case API, so Keras is very simple and easy friendly implementation. While again TensorFlow and PyTorch are complex. If you go to the debugging side, actually Keras is used for you can say small data sets. So no actual debugging is required on the Keras point of view. So that's why it's difficult to debug if required for your application. Even in TensorFlow, as it has got static graph, you need to analyze it in different, you can say, tensor board or something where you can expand the graph and see the operations and actual tensor values for that particular workflow. While in PyTorch, the debugging is easy because it's same Python style debugging and it's a dynamic graph is there. So you can debug at that point very easily. Uh, According to the data set size, so Keras works mostly for prototyping purpose, and that's why on small data sets it worked well. But with huge data sets, it's pretty slow. While TensorFlow and PyTorch both work for very large data sets. And for most of the production ready code, the decision comes to TensorFlow or PyTorch. So TensorFlow is from Google and PyTorch is from Facebook. It's based on the Torch framework. So when it comes to prototyping, you can go for Keras. So this is just a starting point that I'm suggesting whenever you start with uh, deep learning. So if you just want to experiment small prototype, implement a small classifier, something like that, go for Keras first of all. So Keras is very easy and you can, it's easy to know the concepts and implement it. So for small scale prototype, it works too. And when it comes to actually productizing the code, you have two options, that is TensorFlow and PyTorch. So whichever you are comfortable with, you can go ahead. For this session, I will be just introducing PyTorch basics. So, but you can go for TensorFlow as well. So that is also very good enough and very vast, you can say, use case for this. While these are the documentation links so that you can start from here. So you can get almost every starting point from this documentation. Wherever you get stuck, you can refer the documentation. It's very well written, and these are very pretty much matured documentation. So yes, so these are related to the frameworks. So any question related to this? Okay, so now we'll go to the lab exercise. So I will just